course, this is very quickly elastic deformation versus plastic deformation. Elastic deformation refers to recoverable deformation, that is, the deformation or strain is recovered the moment you remove the load, right? And then plastic deformation is the one which is of interest to us, where you are getting permanent shape change or permanent straining. So after you remove the load, meaning after you remove the punch, you still have the strain or the form component not going back to its original size and shape. So that is what we call as the plastic deformation. Usually in elasticity, the Hooke's law is very popular. The stress strain are related by Hooke's law. When it comes to plastic strain, this is the kind of relationship, especially for steels, which we use. The true stress and true strain are related by this kind of an equation, where K and N are constants. K is like strength coefficient, N is called as the work hardening exponent. So this way stress strain gets related in plasticity. Okay, very quickly, if you are familiar with tensile test, this is how a tensile test looks. We'll come back to that later in the next module also. I just want to illustrate very quickly how you get the parameter N and K. So you convert the load elongation data into engineering stress strain data by dividing the load by the initial cross-section area and the elongation by the initial gauge length. That would give you the engineering stress strain curve. Then convert this into true stress, true strain. You already know how to convert engineering stress, true stress, engineering strain, true strain. Then you get this data. Then you plot logarithmic true stress versus logarithmic true strain, slope of which gives you K. And from the intercept, you can calculate. Slope gives you N. And from the intercept, you can calculate the K value. This is how you get K and N from a simple tensile test. Now we move on, we look at the, during sheet forming, what are the major modes of deformation? Okay. So we can have what we call as the deep drawing mode, stretching mode, and bending mode, or of course in most components you are going to have combination of modes. So let's look at this. So what is the deep drawing mode of deformation? So here the flat blank is essentially constrained where the center portion is pressed into a die opening to draw the metal into the desired shape without folding of the components on the corners. So this is a very simple idea. We have seen very familiar cups like this, like our kitchen utensils or a gas cylinder. So these are all deep drawn cups. And what is typical out here, of course, you have a variety of applications for that. But in terms of the deformation condition, the deep drawing mode is defined by positive major strain and negative minor strain in the flange. Okay, so this is what is characteristic of deep drawing mode of forming. Let's move on and look at another process, which is the bending process. You have seen many members which are just bent, right? So the interesting thing in bending is, as you see here, this is an example of a very simple bending process. You can see that in the outer fibers, you will have positive strain. And if you look at the inner surface, inner fiber, you will have compressive strain. So this is very, very characteristic of any bending process. Across the bending radius, you will have variation in the stress state from tensile to compression across the sheet thickness, which means the corresponding stress state also will vary from tensile to compression as you go from the top surface to the bottom surface. This is very important to appreciate because many of spring back problems are related to this through thickness variation in the stress state, namely from positive to negative side. If hypothetically, if you can imagine that the thickness, across the thickness, our stress state was only tensile, then your spring back issues will be reduced. Right. So in the first module, our focus was essentially, I would call it as demystification of what is happening during sheet metal forming. Earlier, we were just kind of thinking, okay, there was a flat sheet metal. It has become a component after forming, but we did not have a deep understanding of what was happening to the sheet metal, right? So now we know that we can, in a detailed way, quantify what is happening during the forming, namely by knowing what is the combination of major, minor, and thickness strain at every point in the component. So that is the basic achievement of our last module. We have completely quantified the deformation that is happening. So now if you visualize the hat of how you would represent it, you can think that at every point in the component you can calculate, measure, whatever the combination of major and minor strain, and you can even plot it, okay, for all the points in your sheet metal component. The moment you do that, then you know that you have a complete description of the forming behavior that has gone into producing that component, right? And we also remarked this forming behavior, namely the kind of strains that are going to develop and the way the forming behavior will be, and eventually is it going to succeed, is it going to fail, is mainly depending upon three sets of parameters. We remarked that in the earlier module. One, the sheet metal itself, the sheet metal quality. Then the second set of parameters were the process parameters, where we identified two key parameters, namely the blank holding force and the friction or the lubrication. Third one is of course the component shape, size, your the tool geometry effect. And of course we also talked about the equipment itself, what equipment we are using. So one key element in this system is the sheet metal itself. So what we are going to talk about in this particular module is understanding the sheet metal quality, or understanding the properties of the sheet metal. So that's what we will focus on this module. So one very basic thing, information about sheet metal. For example, any sheet metal that we want to talk about, whether it is steel, IF steel, or advanced high strength steel, or aluminum, copper, or whatever, the basic tensile property is one set of numbers we always want to have. So what you're seeing here is a very simple illustration of a tensile test and identifying some of the key properties that we get from a tensile test, right? So we get what we call as the Young's modulus, which is the slope of the curve in the elastic domain. Then we get the yield strength, right? Yield strength is important because if our loading is going to be below yield strength, then you will never have forming, right? So our stress state or loading condition always has to be above the yield strength. Then of course you have the UTS, ultimate tensile strength. Then we have what we call as the uniform elongation. This uniform elongation is a measure of loosely what we can call as a formability. Typically, the larger this elongation, the easier it will be for us to do the forming operation. So this gives you one indicator, one measure of the forming capability of a sheet metal. So these are directly measured parameters in a tensile test.
So friends, why are we discussing the challenges in the sheet metal and in the stamping industry? A survey was conducted by Honda Americas, and this survey led to a study which concluded that 33% rejection, rework, and challenges in the metal forming industry are happening because of formability. So quality is one of the biggest issues in sheet metal parts, followed only by welding and painting. And therefore, this is a major discussion topic. The second reason is, of course, today product designers who are responsible for designing sheet metal components may have limited manufacturing domain experience. I was listening to Khare sir's history of job profiles, and it was so impressive to see the many years he spent on the shop floor before coming and talking about this. I have only about 25 years compared to Khare sir's long history, but I want to say that this is the big difference today between CAD designers, people who are designing to fit and form, versus manufacturing experts. And so software is the key which can enable you to make these decisions very early in the product life cycle about how to improve product quality. So before I get into the presentation on software, like I mentioned, I will just run through a few slides on formability to emphasize what Professor Narasimhan said. And the first thing that I want to emphasize is what happens when you are trying to deform a plastic part. You are inserting a flat piece of sheet metal between a punch and a die, or any kind of deformation, and then it is held in place by what's called as a blank holder, before which the part travels down and the punch and die make contact and deformation takes place. So do remember the two words that Professor Narasimhan stressed, elasticity and plasticity. These is the two important features that are involved in deformation. So even though we are talking about a sheet metal part, elasticity is very important, plasticity is very important. And just to recap, where did it come from? It came from the N value and the R value as well. So Professor Narasimhan also spoke about the forming limit diagram and the forming limit curve. I just want to emphasize a little bit more. Historically, before computers were in place, what was done is photochemical etching or scribing was done. A piece of sheet metal was marked with several circles, and these circles were then measured, and these points were plotted in order to get what is called as the forming limit diagram. Today, software does this for you in a matter of few seconds. Correlation between major strain, minor strain, and thickness strain. As you can see, please do not ever forget that the volume of the material remains constant, and the increase in surface area results in thinning, decrease in surface area results in thickening. So this is the theory. Everything is about the circle that you saw in the previous slide, and how it got changed into an ellipse is what this entire class was all about. So basically, what is this? This is nothing but major strain and minor strain. And in this situation, we are seeing an ellipse which has a major strain of 3% and a minor strain of 2%. And so on. These plots are created, and you will start to get many such points, which will then result in what is called as the forming limit diagram. So that's the forming limit curve again. And please be aware that the forming limit curve is different for different materials. And these materials are what will form the FLD0. And therefore, we need to be aware about the kind of materials that we are selecting. So somebody was talking about, for example, spring back, or how much time is required in this forming process, etc. A lot of this will depend on the material properties. It will depend on the ultimate tensile strength and the properties that are related to this forming limit curve. What we are looking for and what we need to remember is we are looking to see formability in the green zone, and anything which is 10% within this zone is called as the safe zone or the marginal zone, and above that is the failure zone. So we need to make sure that we move this part of steel such that it remains within the safe zone, and all the circles that you saw plotted will remain within this safe zone. And eventually, this is what we are looking for. It's nothing but the forming limit diagram. And the forming limit diagram denotes all the zones that we earlier saw. If you remember, over here was the zone of the strong wrinkling tendency, and so on is what the forming limit diagram is going to show us. Software will also help us to view this in 3D, but please be aware that this 3D is nothing but the 2D representation of this 3D. So whatever you see in the forming limit diagram is also what the software can enable you to see in a part. And today I will demonstrate this capability to you as well. The other thing that I want to talk about, and which is really very important, especially with one of the questions that was coming, and that is regarding high-speed, high tensile steels. So please be aware, what we are trying to do is deformation. We need to push this stress beyond the point of yield strength, and so that at this point, the part will shift from the zone of elastic deformation into the zone of plastic deformation. So one of the big issues as we are working with high tensile steels is that not enough press load is provided, and the part does not get into the elastic zone, resulting in improper dimensional accuracy, spring back, and so many other issues that were questioned today. So please be aware that this is again the very important factor or the theory behind this.
Now, the die designer has to know, of course, one is the dimension of T slots, which is there on the press table. And number two, of course, these location of these holes where the cushion pins will be admissible. Okay. Now, this is an important input to design before we set out to design die. Another thing important is, as we said in the video, that it is changing very fast in a minute typically. Now, obviously, there is no time to locate the die, align the die every time. So usually there will be self-locating feature. For example, there could be a conical pin on the table diagonally, and the die in its base could have conical holes. So you just drop it by a forklift or by crane, and it gets self-located repeatably. Okay. Now these are the tricks which are used to save time for mass production. And designer has to know what is the locating provision on the target press line for which the die is being designed. The die and press has to marry. It is wrong to say that the same die will work equally well on any press. It does not happen. The die and the mass production tool has to marry the particular production equipment, and it is designed that way. Okay, it is tailored like that. So you have to know which is the front side of the press, which way the die should be loaded, number one. Number two, how it should be located, how it is to be clamped, and where from the cushion pins can be placed. Okay. Now, for designing the blank holder, it is absolutely important because you have to know where the pin will rest. If the pin is placed wrongly, it will break the die. Okay. Good. Now, this is the cushion pin. This is the cushion pad below the press. This is the ground level. Okay. This is the cushion pad. Here you put the pins which come out through those holes, and they are pushing the peripheral holder, which can move up and down with a short stroke, 200 mm to 350 mm max. Okay, it can move up and down. So it will lift up so that you can put the flat sheet, and then the draw beads are here. So they will hold at the periphery, and then while coming down, it will form on the punch face. Okay, now this is how the thing works. So either you deal with the cushion pins, and again the cushion pin has a recommended dimension and certain number of cushion pins have to be put. Now typically cushion pins are around 35 mm diameter, and if it is 35 mm diameter per pin, it can carry 5 tons. So depending on what is the cushion force required, you have to have the right number of pins coming below the blank holder. Now it is absolutely important to ensure that. Otherwise cushion pins will bend and they may get jammed in the hole, and then the table is not usable. Okay. So it is absolutely important. Of course, to prevent that, nowadays these tables come with Teflon lining.
This is, I'll just go through this quickly just for continuity and leading into the next short presentation again. So if you look at it, there are several forming grade steel sheets that are used, that have been used, and are continuing to be used, as well as an evolution, new grades of steels are being utilized. So we just look at some of them. If you look at steel, right, this is the most widely used material in automotive and aerospace applications. Of course, in aerospace, you also have titanium and all. But from automotive sector, steel is the most widely used material. The main reason for that is it has a good strength, good formability, and it's very affordable, and it's also recyclable. So in that way, steel is can be thought of as a wonder material. Interestingly, again, there are several challenges that keep coming from alternate materials, from aluminum, composites, variety of other materials try to enter the domain of steel, and you always find that the steel keeps evolving itself. The R&D community of steel, they keep on coming with more and more innovations. So till date, if you see, steel is still like the #1 material that is used in sheet metal industry, more so in the automotive industry. Just to give you, this is like a old story, if you will. So the conventional grades of steel are the CQ grade, DQ grade, DDQ grade and EDDQ grade. And essentially, these grades are used for, for the different levels of severity in forming. CQ will be used for the lowest severity and EDDQ will be used for moderately high severe forming. And of course, if you look at the recent grades, then you have the IF steel, Bay hardening steel, HSLA steel, and then what we call as the advanced high strength steel. I'll talk to you on that separately. So essentially, these are the variety of steels that are available to us, right? So essentially, these conventional grades of steel are developed for achieving high formability. They are described in standards, and they are available both in hot and cold roll condition. Typically, hot roll conditions, you use it for an exposed part because the surface finish will not be as good as the cold roll. The cold roll parts sheets are used in exposed parts where you need better surface finish, and where you also need strength. What is called as the advanced high strength steel, or in short, it is referred to as AHSS. This is a evolving R&D problem. So we can get a feel for what are the various steels that are available under this, right? And where the technology is moving or where the developments are taking place. So basically, the advanced high strength steel can be thought of first generation, second generation, and third generation. The first generation steels include the DP steel, which is a dual phase steel, and the trip steel. Then second generation steels include the complex phase steel and the TWIP steels. And the third generation AHSS includes quench and partition steel. So these are some of the steels that have been developed in the recent past and continuing to develop as we speak. So this is one of the most popular curve. I'm sure many of you might have seen. This is called as the typical banana curve, but I will continue to use it because it gives us in one picture a lot of feel for the developments that are happening in the steel world. And as we discussed, steel is a material where the R&D keeps reinventing itself. So you kind of get better and better steel so that you can ward away the challenges coming from other materials. Of course, in today's scenario, other materials are finding place in automotive application, but steel remains to be single most dominant material, right? So if you look at this curve, the famous banana curve, it is a plot of elongation versus tensile strength. Essentially, for these various grades of steel, we see what is the combination of the property, namely elongation and strength, that particular steel will be having. For example, IF steel, we saw that it is the one which is having very good formability, right? So it has elongation around 50% plus, but you can see the strength is going to be very low. It will be around 180 megapascal, right? And you can see some of the steels that are getting developed, which we talked about, the first generation, second generation type of steel. And general thumb rule you can see is as you increase the strength, the ductility or the elongation or the forming capability is going to keep decreasing. So there is, it is a natural behavior. The natural behavior is most of the mechanisms that will give us increase in strength is going to lead to decrease in the elongation, or another way to look at it is going to give a decrease in the formability. So that is why this shape of the banana curve comes. Okay. Of course, we have this MART, which is the martensitic steel. DP is the dual phase steel we talked about, and CP is the complex phase steel. We mentioned about HSLA, high strength low alloy steel. Then PH we talked about, Bay hardening steel, right? Then we mentioned IFHS, that is interstitial free high strength steel, right? So you can see the variety of steels, we talked about it. Of course, looking at this kind of a representation, as a practicing engineer, if we were asked what is your wish list, then obviously all of us would say, can we move diagonally in this direction, right? The curve is defined like this, but we always pose the question, can I have the cake and eat it too? meaning can I have high strength and high ductility or high formability together, which means we want to drive that steel development in this diagonal direction. And the steel R&D community is working on that. So you have austenitic stainless steel, you have the TWIP steel. So you can see that these steels are trying to get developed in this direction. And of course, now there are several steels that are clustering around here. There are new development taking place, which tries to address also the economic consideration. Develop a steel which is also economical, right? Compromise a little bit on the property, but then bring down the cost, right? So this in one single figure gives you a feel for the steel R&D and the technology that is coming out. Right. So TRIP steel, as I said, we're going to have what we call as the transformation induced plasticity type of steel. So you can see the listing here. You have the dual phase steel, TRIP steel, complex phase steel, TWIP steel, and QNP steel. Right. So a variety of steels are out here that are available and that are being developed. Yeah. Anybody would like to say what you understand by TWB or Tailor Welded Blank? Yeah.
So these are the blanks that are made from two blanks of different thickness and are welded by laser.
Okay, great, very good, very good. Yeah, so that is the basis. Let's look at basically basically TWB is part of the various approaches that one can have for weight reduction. You can achieve weight reduction by using low density alloy like magnesium alloy or aluminum alloy, or you can use composites, or you can use manufacturing process like hydroforming or superplastic forming, where you can form low density material like aluminum, which we touched upon yesterday, right? Or you can use Tailor Welded Blank. So these are variety of opportunities available for weight reduction. So once again, the TWB, the major driver is really weight reduction. So we'll look at, of course, we quickly saw what is TWB, and we'll see why TWB, advantages, applications, and then some barriers and issues pertaining to the use of TWB. Okay, basically Tailor Welded Blank means these are sheet blanks of either same or different thickness or properties welded together or tailored together to specific shape and size before the forming process, which means you could have two different materials, meaning grades of different strength could be welded together, or it could be similar grade but different thickness welded together, or a combination of these two. So essentially you will have a weld that is going to run through your undeformed blank. So before we go and do the forming, our blank is going to be a welded blank, and the pieces that are getting welded can be either different thickness or different material combination, or it could be different material and different thickness. This is the idea of basic definition of a Tailor Welded Blank. So the next question to pose is, why TWB? And when do you think we can use TWB? Anybody would like to comment why TWB? Okay. So essentially, we can use a TWB whenever we find there is a different property requirement in different locations of a single sheet metal component. Let's say you have one sheet metal component, and in some regions you need a different property, and different region, another region, you need a different property. For example, in certain regions you may need a higher strength requirement or a higher load bearing capacity, and in some other regions you don't need that, right? So you have a differential property requirement. This is from, say, strength perspective. And of course you can also think in terms of maybe corrosion. You may have a different corrosion requirements on one side of the component and on the other side of the component. So essentially one can think of TWB when you have the differential property requirements. That is where our requirement for TWB comes, right? Just imagine that you have one component, and in one region of the component you need a larger strength or larger load bearing capacity. How would we handle it? if suppose no TWB can be used, then our single monolithic sheet blank will either be the thicker material throughout or a stronger material throughout. That is how you can achieve the high strength requirement in certain regions of the component. So you are forced to choose a thicker material throughout the component. Now, if you have this opportunity, I'll put the right material, right thickness at the right location for a given component itself. Then you can see that the opportunities open up. So wherever I need higher load bearing capacity or higher strength requirement, then I can put a higher strength material out there or a thicker material out there. And in the remaining regions where I don't have such a requirement, I can put a lower thickness material. So this is the basic philosophy of how we can exploit this concept of TWB. So you can see the advantage. As we said, the primary driver is really weight reduction. Since we can use a combination of thicker and thinner sheet metal in place of uniformly thick sheet metal, you're going to achieve weight reduction. And achieving weight reduction automatically means that you're going to lower the fuel consumption, and thereby you can see that you can achieve reduction in the emissions. So this is the major advantage of Tailor Welded Blank. So of course, cost reduction, flexibility for component designers. You can work on different materials, different thickness combination. You can even think of scrap utilization. For example, I have seen when I visited Maruti several years back, when they make their big doors, the window part is a scrap. They cut out, right, that window part. So that could potentially be used as a tailor welded for a smaller component in a smaller component. So scrap utilization is also a big advantage when you can think of tailor welded blank.